today I'm gonna attempt 200% in Cuphead in just under 12 hours. In my previous video, I managed to get 100% in this ridiculously hard game with an A+ for every single boss and run and gun challenges in just under 24 hours. But then I got bombarded with comments that said, just remember 100 is 200 in this game. But Cuphead goes to 200%. Get S rank to prove you're a true gamer. So to prove the naysayers wrong, I'm gonna S rank every single boss on expert mode and do something extra special at the end, so make sure you watch all the way through it to find out. But before we start, consider subscribing to the channel as we're planning on hitting 100k by the end of this year. It's a pretty big milestone, but with your help, I think we can definitely make it happen. Besides, the faster this channel grows, the more I can shower you with amazing content. So subscribe now! Anyways, with that said, let's get right into the video. Last time we played Mugman because he never seems to get the attention he deserves in any Cuphead related video. But because we played him already, I think it's only fair that we bring the main face of the game along this time, right? Nah, let's just go with the mug. Alright, so we're back in Inkwell L1. Man, this brings back so many lovely memories. Like this one time I had to jump over these spiked platforms with perfect timing. Or when I had to dodge all these stars and UFOs shooting at me. Oh, and let's not forget about the time when this guy swarmed me with all these deadly plant monsters. Ah, yes, good times. Maybe this was a mistake. Ah, what the heck? How much harder can this expert mode be? It's not like I'm gonna die several times before I beat the first boss. I die several times before I beat the first boss. Okay, maybe I was a little too overly optimistic taking on this challenge. But to be fair, I didn't play this game at all after the last time I finished it. So obviously, I'm gonna be a bit rusty. However, with a bit more time spent getting used to the controls again, I regained the level of skill I used to have. Not just that, but I also happen to have unlocked one of the most broken guns in the game. Introducing the crack shot. I gotta say, it was pretty nostalgic to have started with this gun since I began my first journey with the chaser. And this one was a carbon copy of it, except it packed a lot more punch. Despite the slight increase in speed and the varied height differences of the jumps, Goopy was surprisingly easy to beat, getting me my very first S rank in less than 10 minutes. And here I thought it was gonna be crazy harder than everyone made it out. Alright, Goopy's the easiest boss in the game, I get it. We'll see if the next boss is any different then. Next up were the root packs, and I did notice the potatoes spitting a lot quicker than before. But it wasn't anything I couldn't handle. Then came the onion, but instead of shooting at it, I wanted to see what all the fuss was about when you left him alone. Apparently there's a secret phase where it'll just withdraw from the fight and let you move on to the next phase, but not without summoning a stupid radish boss. So now I had to deal with this pain in the butt radish and the carrot at the same time. Not gonna lie, the radish was super annoying, so I made sure to immediately shoot at the onion this time so I didn't have to put up with the spinning Beyblade attacks again. And with the radish gone, taking out the carrot was as easy as counting 1 to 10, securing my second S rank in this challenge. Without a doubt, the first two bosses weren't too bad even when it was on expert, but little did I know that was all about to change when I faced Ribby and Croaks. You'd think the game would make the bosses incrementally harder one boss at a time so the players could slowly ease into the difficulty, right? Well, not this game, it doesn't. Compared to the regular mode, I had to now dodge Ribby's burning fist and Croak's fireflies at the same time. And when I got to the second phase, Ribby would shoot those same burning fists on top of hurling these glowing spheres while the other guy fanned me towards all of it. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, it got a lot worse. These coins used to be so easy to dodge before, but now they came at me like a machine gun. But the worst by far were these spinning platforms, because no matter how hard I tried, I'd almost always lose a heart or two. Ribby and Croaks on expert mode was the real deal, and I gotta admit, it took some time until I was able to beat them, only to go over the time limit. I thought equipping the charge gun would help me get over this problem since it had a higher damage output, which meant a faster clear. But that still didn't solve the issue. I've already wasted more than an hour fighting this boss, so I did what any reasonable person would have done if they were in my shoes. I cheated. Nah, I'm just kidding. Rather, I just did some googling and it turns out the charm I had equipped actually reduced my damage to compensate for the extra hearts I got, which made so much sense why my fights were taking so long. So the solution that I came up with was to equip this charm called the Heart Ring, which nullified that issue, but also gave me a heart for every first, third, and sixth parries during my battles. Combine that with pairing the super of the crack shot and you get a very beefy boy. And as soon as I made that change, I finally beat the 2 amphibian boxers and got that S rank. I gotta say, with these 3 items combined, I felt pretty confident in my ability to get through the rest of the bosses a lot quicker now. Until I realized my next battle was on a plane against Hilda, who was one of the most screen clogging bosses in the game. But that's alright, so long as I dodge her attacks, right? Yup, just dodge her attack. This one for sure. Anytime now. Why can't I dodge her attack? Yeah, her attacks were pretty hard to dodge. But can you blame me when she's just constantly firing all these things that could only be described as overkill? Compared to Hilda on regular mode, these UFOs would attack at double the speed and the stars would generate at double the amount. Even when I got got a couple more hearts from parrying, I would still end up with just one heart. And something I couldn't figure out for the longest time was these UFOs would fire right as they got under me. And not knowing about it at the time made me rely on my reaction speed, setting myself up for failure and falling short of getting that perfect score. But as soon as I noticed it, I was able to get my timing right to dodge them easily, beat the sadistic moon lady, and successfully acquired the S rank. Next up on the list was Kang Nation, and boy, this guy was actually not too bad. Because the crack shell was such a busted weapon, none of Cagney's minions came even remotely close to touching me. Like, as soon as they came out, the crack shell was like, up, no you don't. As for these flying carrots, boomerangs, and his face stretching forward, I just had to simply jump up and down to easily evade them. Even Cagney's final phase wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. Other than the vines rising up a little faster and an added number of pollen fired, I still had plenty of time to jump on the platforms around me to avoid them. Not to mention, pairing these pink pollen gave me more health, so Cagney didn't even stand a chance. Man, that was a freebie. And with the 5 bosses taken down, I now had access to the second island, where I'm most likely gonna start really regretting doing this challenge, since the bosses are most likely gonna be ridiculously hard. But as long as you guys are happy, it's all worth it in the end. Now, I still had a little over 9 hours left, but because there were still 14 bosses remaining and took almost 2 hours trying to beat these two, it was clear to me that I couldn't spend more than 30 minutes on each boss from here on out. So the 5-headed gamer I strategically devised a plan so intricate and well thought out that I wasn't worried at all heading into the next island. That's a lie, I was planless, but I'm sure it's all gonna work. I should have come up with a plan. Anyways, when I got to the second island, I picked the Jimmy the Great as my first opponent. The reason for this was because it literally took me 2 tries to beat this guy on regular mode before. But since I had to fight him on expert mode now, well, I believe I might have underestimated him just a little bit. Okay, maybe more than a little bit. Alright, I thought I was gonna beat him in my first try. But no, he had to swarm me with these cat statues, chase me down with magical blades, and shower me with all these treasures that could have clearly been donated to charity, you monster. I definitely did struggle initially, but once I got past the first phase, the rest of the fight was not too complicated, as it actually involved less projectiles flying at me. And with a bit of concentration, the Jimmy was taken down and the S rank was mine. Now, if I were to follow the exact same order of bosses in my last video, my next opponent was gonna be Bonnie here. But as most of you may or may not know, it literally took me 1.5 hours to beat her on regular mode, which traumatized me even to this day. So because I wasn't mentally and emotionally ready to face her yet, I decided to get the plane battles out of the way first, which meant my next opponent was gonna be Wally Warbles instead. And it looks like it didn't matter either way, because Wally on expert mode was an absolute menace. I can't tell you how incredibly hard it was to consistently dodge these eggs he kept regurgitating at me. And these feathers he shot out was like trying to wiggle your way through every single drop of water in a rain shower. But even when I muscled my way through into somehow beating him, I kept getting way past the time limit. Several times actually. And that was because I wasn't dealing enough damage even with the heart ring equipped. So I looked through my items and found this charm that increased the rate at how fast my super meter filled up. And with it, I was now using my supers twice as many times than before. But now I also face the problem of needing to only fight with 3 lives for the entirety of the battle. Getting through all these barrages of attacks without taking a single hit gave me the biggest headache of my life. But with an ungodly amount of repetition, I bested the featherless chicken and deservingly got that S rank. So much for beating each boss in 30 minutes. After being mentally assaulted by Wally, I wasn't as intimidated to face Bonnie anymore. So I took her on as my next opponent. And did I regret doing that? Well, yeah, of course I did. I mean, what did I expect? She was the same irritating candy queen who made her underlings do the dirty work for her until eventually she takes matters into her own hands and finishes the job. What's more, in the regular mode, there was only one of her heads homing in on me. But now I had to deal with 2 of them? 2 freaking Bonnie heads? I mean, come on, there's only so much I can handle. Whatever, since it came down to this, I had to change my charm to the smoke bomb to maximize my ability to evade, which meant I couldn't make a single mistake. But since I beat Wally with the same condition, I had faith in myself to do it again with Bonnie. It took a good amount of attempts, but once I got used to the trajectory of her head, I managed to bring her candiness down, and thank my lucky stars I didn't have to face her anymore. But I couldn't rest easy just yet, as this next boss was gonna need a whole lot of dodging as well. Much like Bonnie, fighting against Beppy the Clown was just as brutal. I mean, I just got over dodging Bonnie's heads, and now I had to deal with this, and this, and this. I know I sound like a broken record, but and this as well? Like, come on, give me a chance to breathe. The only way I was gonna beat Beppy was to survive long enough to stack as many hearts before I got to the last phase. But obviously, that's easier said than done, especially when it was almost guaranteed I'd lose 1 or 2 hearts in this second phase with the doggy balloon fest. However, in this one round where I made it to the final phase with 3 lives, I surprised myself by kicking my gamer instincts to 5th gear and dodged every single baseball that flew my way. Like, I mean, wow, look at me go. It's almost like everything's coming in slow motion. Surely all that's gonna pay off. I didn't let it get to me, and by keeping my cool for the next round, I was able to replicate the same level of prowess by dodging like a mad lad. And just like that, I triumphed over Beppy and got myself that S rank. Yeah. Woohoo. I need therapy. With my morale at an all-time high, I headed into my next fight with Grim Matchstick. And here I thought Grimmy was gonna torment me like the rest of the bosses I faced so far. But turns out that wasn't the case at all, as he was actually really easy to beat. The only difference I noticed when fighting Grimmy on expert mode was that his attacks were slightly faster now. And instead of shooting a single orb attack, he now shot 2. But all his attacks were still downright predictable. Not much to say about this one, except I was lucky I got to save a bit of time. Speaking of time, once I beat all the bosses for the second island, I saw that I had 7 hours on the clock, which meant I only had 5 hours to get through the remaining 9 bosses. And 5 hours is not a lot of time, seeing that it took me more than 7 hours to beat 10 so far. To be frank, I didn't think it was worth continuing on, seeing how behind I was. But even then, I still had to try. At this point, it didn't matter who I faced first, because I was gonna have to fight them all eventually. And so I picked Rumor Honeybottom as my first opponent. Rumor on expert mode didn't pose much of a threat, as most of her attacks were all the same as when I fought her in regular mode. All I needed to do against her was to be constantly on the move and use my super art in the final phase to win the battle. Next up was Captain Brinybeard. For Briny here, the only thing I had to look out for was this barrel that fell when I least expected it. But even when it did hit me, I quickly regained the hit points I lost with the heart ring charm. As for the rest, I just had to pop my super art to negate all his attacks and shoot him down with a crack shot. Then came Warner Worm in a slightly harder challenge compared to the first two. His second phase was the only part that was giving me a hard time because of how small of a space I had to work with. I could have used the smoke bomb to easily get to the other side, but I also wanted to keep the heart ring to survive the last phase. Just then, when I least expected it, I happened to accidentally walk over this platform to the other side. And this whole time, I thought I'd take damage if I did this. Oh well, thanks to that lucky discovery, I easily got to the final phase with 3 hearts. But then I got hit and lost 1 heart, which compelled me to restart the round. However, I remembered I still haven't gotten my 6th parry off yet, so I did just that and beat the rodent soon after. And then I realized only 20 minutes went by. Were the bosses getting easier, or was I improving after playing this game for 7 straight hours? Either way, things were looking up for me, and I continued on by carrying over this momentum to my fight with Sally Stageplay. With her, I knew she was gonna take a while to beat. Not because of how difficult she was as a boss, but because the only way to get all 3 parries and still beat her within the time limit was to parry this pink rose that randomly fell from above. Numerous attempts were made in trying to get that rose, until finally in this one round, I was able to do so and put Sally out of business. After that, it was time to catch the train on the Phantom Express. Using the crack shot was actually not very effective against this first guy, so I had to change to the roundabout, which was a lot more efficient in getting rid of these eyeballs thrown at me. In fact, I continued to use the roundabout to gun down the skeleton and the lollipops as well. But when I got to the final phase, I changed back to the crack shot, as it definitely did a better job hitting the moving heart. And with a bit more shooting, the creepy 4-legged train was defeated, putting me at 8 hours and 17 minutes with only 4 more bosses remaining. Now, 2 of those bosses were plane battles, and one of them was a fight I was not looking forward to at all. And no, I wasn't talking about Calamaria, whose attacks were pretty mediocre, in which I actually beat her in 5 tries. But it was this madman of a scientist who almost drove me to quit my very first Cuphead challenge. He was extremely hard enough already on regular mode when he pulverized me with pretty much every weapon that ever existed. But to take him on in expert mode, well, let's just say I was genuinely terrified. However, I had no time to let my fears get the best of me, so this time I actually devised a plan to save as much time as I could. Alright, so here's what I did. Phase 1, destroys laser, drone spawning area, and the midsection in that order. Phase 2, save up my super meter to blow his head up right before he shoots it out so I can skip as much of the second phase as possible. And phase 3, shrink myself every time the doctor pulls out his gem to shoot me down with these radial burst attacks, and then unshrink myself to hit him with as many supers as I can. And by executing this brilliantly orchestrated plan to the T, I was able to beat Dr. Cal in a whopping time of under 30 minutes, putting me at 9 hours and 3 minutes now. All that's left was to beat King Dice and the Devil, and I was gonna complete this challenge. But obviously that was easier said than done, as King Dice was one of those bosses that took the longest time to beat because of all these other bosses I had to take on before facing him. And since I had to fight them in expert mode, they were noticeably harder to deal with. However, I didn't have to face them all to get to the king, so I picked the same first 3 mini bosses to fight every single time by manipulating the die number I got with good timing. This also helped me shave off a huge chunk of time as well, which was one of the biggest issues I ran into in my previous attempts at beating him. But even when I got all that sorted out, the fact of the matter was the big guy and his card attack still gave me so much trouble, as it now had even wider gaps and went on for much longer compared to the regular mode. Good thing I had the heart ring equipped, as each time I lost a heart, I gained it right back to keep me barely above 3 hearts. And after going at it for an hour, I beat the king of scams and quickly made my way to take on the final boss. You would think because the devil was the last boss in the game, he'd be an absolute force to be reckoned with. But honestly, even on expert mode, it was one of the most anticlimactic endings ever, because all I needed to do was play dodgeball in the first first phase, amass as much health as I can on the second phase, then use my super at the end to avoid this poker chip and then finish him off with a crack shot. I'm not gonna lie, this wasn't the kind of ending I had hoped for, and I'm sure you guys could agree with me on this, which is why you'll be pleasantly surprised to hear that this challenge was actually far from over. Let me explain. You see, when I pulled up my list to marvel at all the S ranks I had obtained, I couldn't help but notice all these atrocious A pluses for the run and gun challenges. So I did a little bit of digging again on Google, and it turns out there was a secret grade called a P rank. The P stood for pacifist, and to get it, I had to beat the run and gun challenges without killing a single enemy along the way. To be frank, I could have just ended the video with the S ranks right then and there, but the perfectionist in me wanted that P rank so bad, so I just couldn't let it slide. And so with the remaining hour I had left on the clock, I wasted no time by tackling the first run and gun challenge at Forest Follies. The thought of completing this without hitting a single soul was quite intimidating at first, but thanks to all the insanely difficult bosses that involved lots and lots of dodging, it all led up to a pretty seamless run, until I ran into my very first issue where I couldn't get past this tin machine. But by calmly assessing the situation, I figured out that I could use my second super art to jump over the guy, which I then proceeded to make it to the end and grab my very first P rank. But then I saw this sliver of imperfection and my OCD went absolutely ballistic, which is why I ran it back to beat the whole thing again, just to satiate my obsession for perfection. But now that this was the standard for the rest of the run and guns, I was quickly met with a realization that I might have just jeopardized the entire challenge because of it. But the thrill was definitely worth it, and believe it or not, even with the additional challenge I gave myself, I still somehow pushed through the next 4 run and guns in just under 20 minutes. And with 40 minutes left on the clock, I took my sweet time with the last one, thinking I was pretty much guaranteed to make it in time. But then something went horribly wrong. For the last run and gun challenge, equipping the smoke dash was the worst possible mistake I could have ever made, as it was pretty much impossible to get to the last phase without losing a life or two. Then again, without the smoke dash, I found myself crouching in some of the corners for more than 30 seconds at a time in order to get past the mob. It was a lose-lose situation, but because I wasn't confident enough to get through the last phase without getting hit even once, I opted for more hearts over the smoke dash. However, when I checked the time and saw that I only had a few minutes left on the clock, it seemed like it was already too late. But giving up now would only prove that I didn't have what it takes to truly complete this game at its fullest. It meant I had to scrap this video altogether just to start all over again because of one measly rule I made for myself. Over my dead body, I'm letting that happen. It was down to the wire as I only had 3 minutes left, which was enough to get one last run in. Despite being in a hurry, I still took my time to carefully navigate through the mobs, only moving forward when it was safe to do so. But that didn't stop my nerves from getting the better of me, as I lost a heart to this barnacle head halfway through, followed by another to the lobster. With only 3 hearts remaining and 1 minute and 40 seconds left on the clock, I had no choice but to keep going. I hopped onto the big octopus, parried the first pink shrimp to fill up my super meter, and used my super art to avoid the initial danger. Then the super art wore off, and I had but only my skills to rely on now. I mustered up every bit of focus and concentration in doing my absolute best to dodge everything that flew my way. I don't know what came over me, but by some miracle, I was able to not lose a single heart up to this point. And just when I thought I couldn't keep this up any longer, I saw the duck at the end of the screen and you know when you're so close yet so far, and it seems like the universe is against your entire existence so much to the point where nothing you do will ever change that destiny? Well, I'm glad today wasn't that day. And with that, I have officially 200%ed Cuphead in the most epic way possible. I gotta say, even I wasn't expecting such a jaw-dropping ending with literally only a few seconds to spare. Not just that, but I also got an S and P rank for the entire game, just so I can have a pretty list to look at. What is wrong with me? As always, hope you guys enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed playing. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can join me in my adventures to conquer many more challenges in the future to come. Anyways, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.